The moment he said it, I stopped breathing. "I want you packed before dinner," my dad said coldly, not looking away. "Your sister's husband is moving into your room." He didn't flinch. Not even a hint of shame in his tone. Just stood there in the middle of the kitchen, arms crossed, like he hadn't just ripped the ground out from beneath me. I was 24. I had a job. I paid rent. I cooked. I cleaned. But to him, I was disposable. Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us where are you from and from which city you're watching our videos. And after watching the whole video, don't forget to tell us what would you do in this situation? Be honest, tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin. "Tonight?" asked quietly, not because I didn't hear him, but because I needed to know if he really meant it. He nodded. "Yeah. We don't have room for you anymore. You've been living here long enough." "And where exactly do you want me to go?" My voice didn't crack, not yet. I held it together like I always did. He picked up his coffee mug, took a sip, and shrugged. "Figure it out. You're an adult. It's not our responsibility anymore. Kevin and Maya are starting their life. They need space." Kevin, the man who once drunkenly told me I'd never be good enough for anyone. And Maya, my perfect sister with her perfect nails, perfect fiancé, and perfect life. They were getting my room, my bed, my walls, my life. And I was getting the sidewalk. I turned away before I said something I'd regret. Not that it mattered anymore. Regret was a luxury. I had survival to think about now. That night, I packed quietly. A duffel bag, a backpack, one suitcase. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even slam a door. I just left. They didn't ask where I was going. No one looked out the window. No one stopped me. But the next day, they couldn't take their eyes off me. Because I came back. And I wasn't alone. I pulled up in a black Escalade, the kind that makes people peek through blinds. I stepped out, heels clicking against the driveway, head held high. Kevin was out front shirtless, watering the grass. The hose slipped from his hand when he saw me. Water splashed across the concrete. Maya came rushing out onto the porch. She froze mid-step. And Dad? He walked out, coffee mug in hand again, like he'd rehearsed this routine. But this time it shattered when it hit the floor. Because behind me, another car door opened. And the man who stepped out wasn't someone they ever expected to see beside me. Not in this lifetime. Not ever. And that was just the beginning. Kevin's mouth was still hanging open when I stepped forward. He blinked twice, stammered. Is that him?" "Oh, it was." And watching the blood drain from his face was better than anything I'd imagined. Right behind me stood Graham Porter, sharp navy suit, silver cufflinks, polished shoes, and eyes like he owned the air we breathed. Because, in a way, he did. Graham wasn't just some man. He was the man, the CEO of Portwell Holdings. A self-made billionaire. The same man Kevin used to mock every time his name came up on the news, calling him the corporate vulture with a fake smile. And now, he was smiling at me. "Morning, sweetheart," Graham said, his voice deep and calm as he leaned over to brush a kiss on my cheek. "You ready?" My dad's jaw clenched. Who is this?" I didn't look at him. Instead, I turned to Maya, who was gripping the railing of the porch like it might collapse under her. "You remember Graham, right?" I said sweetly. "He came to my art exhibit 2 months ago." Kevin coughed like he'd swallowed something. "The Graham Porter?" "The one and only," I replied, brushing non-existent dust off my blazer. Maya's eyes flicked between us, searching for cracks in the moment. But there weren't any. I'd made sure of that. Dad stepped forward, voice strained. "Why are you here?" Graham answered for me. "We're here because Riley forgot something." He gave me a subtle nod and I smiled, not politely, but like someone who'd waited a long time for this day. "I forgot a few things in my old room," I said, walking past all of them like I still own the house. Because, in a way, I did. The front door creaked open as I pushed through. Every memory, every insult, every moment I was made to feel small flooded back. But now it felt different, like the house had shrunk. They followed me inside, none of them saying a word. Even Kevin had gone quiet, and that man always had something to say, especially when it came to belittling me. I paused halfway up the stairs and looked over my shoulder. "Oh, and just so you know," I said casually, "you might want to check your paperwork." "The deed?" Dad narrowed his eyes. "What about it?" "I bought the house." Silence. Absolute, perfect silence. "Then, what?" Maya screeched. "I bought the house," I repeated, slower this time, letting the words hang in the air like thunderclouds. "Full purchase. Paid in cash yesterday. Name's already changed over." "No, Dad shook his head. "That's impossible. This house isn't even for sale." "Oh, it was," I said. Turns out when Kevin defaulted on that loan he secretly took out against the property, the bank wasn't too happy. Kevin's face drained to gray. I didn't think they'd actually. "You used this house as collateral?" Maya shrieked at him. "I had a plan." I kept walking. In my old room, nothing had changed, except now it looked smaller, sadder, like the walls had heard too many ugly things. I grabbed the duffel I'd left behind on purpose, then turned to face Graham, who stood just inside the doorway. "You good?" he asked gently. I nodded. "More than good." We walked back downstairs where my family stood like statues. No one said anything, not until I reached the door. "You can't just take the house," Dad barked. "You can't do this to us." "You already did it to me," I said, facing him fully for the first time. "You kicked me out to make room for someone who treats me like garbage. You never thought I'd come back. But I did. And I brought receipts." "Where are we supposed to go?" Maya snapped. "We're getting married next week. I hear the motels near the freeway are nice," I said flatly. Kevin lunged forward like he wanted to say something, maybe even scream, but Graham stepped closer, calm, composed, and suddenly 10 times more intimidating. "I'd choose your words very carefully," Graham said, adjusting his cufflinks. "You're lucky she's even letting you stand in her foyer." I opened the door and stepped out into the sunlight. "Oh, and Dad," I called without turning around. He grunted. "You said there was no room for me."
You were right.
"There isn't. Not in your life. Not in this house. But I found a better one I actually belong in." And with that I left. But trust me, this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. The sun hit just right as I walked down the porch steps, warm on my shoulders, wind brushing against my cheek like freedom. Behind me, the front door slammed shut, and I could hear shouting erupt inside like fireworks going off in a tin can. Graham opened the back door of the Escalade for me like a gentleman. As I slid into the soft leather seat, I felt it for the first time. Not just anger, not revenge. Relief. Like I had just peeled off 1,000 pounds of dead weight. "Ready to close the final loop?" Graham asked as he got into the driver's side, glancing at me with that quiet smirk he always wore when we were about to shake up someone's world. "Let's go shut it down," I replied. See, buying the house was only phase 1. My father thought kicking me out meant I'd crawl into some dusty corner of the world. What he didn't know was that I had been working 3 jobs, 2 remote, 1 on-site, saving every cent like it was sacred. I had grit. I had hunger. And 2 years ago, I met Graham at a gallery event I was volunteering for, not by accident but because I made it happen. I knew his story. How he built his empire from nothing. I figured if anyone understood being treated like dirt and coming back with fire, it was him.
And he did.
That one conversation led to a mentorship, then friendship, then something deeper, something I didn't see coming. He didn't just offer me a better life. He taught me how to build my own. Which brings us to phase 2. We pulled into the parking lot of Ridgeview Hall, the exact venue where Maya's engagement party was set to happen that night. It was dressed to the nines, fairy lights, silk curtains, gold trim, everything.
Too bad I owned it now.
Graham handed me the thick envelope from the glove box. Inside were the keys. And a letter addressed to the future Mrs. King, Maya's little fantasy title. I handed it to the front desk manager as we walked in. He read the letter, looked between me and Graham, then nodded with a nervous smile. "Yes, ma'am. As of this morning, the venue contract has been terminated." It belongs to Miss Riley Carrington now. The same Riley my family had labeled just a burden. The same Riley who wasn't going anywhere. Well, today I was the destination. You're really doing it, Graham said, watching me with a kind of proud amusement. I glanced at the time. 5:12 p.m. They should be showing up soon. And they did. Half an hour later, Kevin pulled up in a rental car with Maya in full glam, hair curled, makeup glowing, dress clinging to every curve. She looked like a magazine cover until the staff refused to let her in. What do you mean we can't enter? Maya snapped, heels clicking across the pavement. This is our venue. I paid for this. I'm afraid you didn't, the manager said calmly. Ownership transferred this morning. To who? They turned as the doors opened behind them.
To me.
I stepped out, clipboard in hand, sunglasses on. Not a single trace of the girl who used to cry herself to sleep under that roof they kicked me out of. Maya's face went from confusion to pure panic. You've got to be kidding me. Kevin looked like he might explode. You seriously bought our venue? What is wrong with you? I didn't blink. It wasn't hard. Apparently, someone didn't read the contract closely. The old owner left me a loophole. And I bought the lease rights right out from under you. Dad arrived seconds later, red-faced and sweating.
This is low, Riley.
Even for you. No, I said. Low is throwing your daughter out like trash. This is just business. Where are we supposed to go now? The guests are on their way. That sounds like a you problem, I said flatly. But don't worry. I left a note on the front door directing them to the community center. I heard they do lovely potluck parties. Maya's jaw dropped. You're insane. Maybe, I said, turning to leave, but I'm finally free. I walked back to the car and Graham opened the door, like always. As I climbed in, I saw Maya sink onto the curb in her $1,000 heels, phone shaking in her hand, mascara smudging under her eyes. Behind her, my dad looked small for the first time in his life. And I wasn't done yet. Because tomorrow, Phase 3 would hit, and it would shake everything they thought they still had. The next morning arrived like a quiet storm. No thunder, just a slow build of pressure waiting to snap. At 8 a.m. sharp, I walked into the glass-paneled lobby of Carrington Financial Services, my father's pride and joy. His company, his legacy, his throne. Or, at least it used to be. The receptionist looked up from her desk and blinked when she saw me. Can I help you? I'm here for the 8:15 board meeting, I said smoothly, placing my ID on the counter. She squinted. Sorry, the meeting is for shareholders only. I know, I said, pulling out a file from my leather folder and sliding it across to her. This should clear things up. She looked down, read the document, then did a double take. Her mouth parted slightly, and she stood up so fast her chair rolled back and hit the wall. I'll let Mr. Carrington know you've arrived. The corner of my lip twitched. Please do. 2 minutes later, the doors to the boardroom creaked open, and my father appeared, confusion etched across his face like someone had just told him gravity stopped working. Riley, he said, voice rough. What are you doing here? I walked right past him and into the room, where the entire board of directors was already seated. Men in suits, women with sharp eyes, all of them looking at me now. I stood at the head of the table, adjusted the microphone, and spoke with calm, collected poise. As of this morning, I began. I am the majority shareholder of Carrington Financial. I acquired 41% over the past 3 months through a series of private sales. The paperwork was filed and approved last night. The room fell dead silent. My father's face turned the color of ash.
No.
That's not possible. I own 37%. I cut in. You lost majority control when Mr. Holden sold me his shares. He turned to Holden, a gray-haired man 2 seats down, who simply folded his hands and said, the offer was generous. She's got vision. You backstabbed me, Dad snapped. No, I said, eyes locking onto his. You told me to leave.
So I did.
And I used every cent I had, every ounce of knowledge I gained, and built something. I used your name as fuel. You made me tough. So, thank you. You don't know what you're doing, he growled. You think this makes you powerful? I turned to the board. As of this morning, Mr. Carrington is suspended pending an internal audit. There are multiple flagged discrepancies in last quarter's financials, including a personal expense account that, if my calculations are correct, was used to pay off a loan Kevin took out under the company's name. Maya's husband. Again. Dragging my father down with him. One of the board members raised an eyebrow. That wasn't disclosed. I handed them the evidence. Effective immediately, I continued, I'll be stepping in as interim CEO while we begin a transition process. I intend to modernize, restructure, and purge any misuse of company resources, including nepotism. My father stood frozen, jaw clenched, veins visible in his temples. You think you've won? No, I said, voice low. I didn't come here to win. I came here to clean up what you left behind. You raised me in a house where silence was punishment and love was conditional. You thought kicking me out would break me. I stepped closer, dropped my voice even lower. But I rebuilt myself from the ground up. And now I stand here, not just back in your life, but at the top of it.
He didn't speak.
He couldn't. Security entered quietly from the back, as requested. I nodded at them. They moved toward my father. Escort Mr. Carrington to HR, I said, so he can collect his personal items. The room didn't cheer. There was no applause. Just quiet shock, stunned faces, and the sound of footsteps as the man who once ruled this company walked out of it with nothing but a red face and a ruined name. Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the skyline, I stood on the rooftop of my new office, my old duffel bag beside me. Graham joined me, 2 coffees in hand. He handed one to me, his smile soft but proud. You did it, he said. No, I replied, looking out over the city. We did it. But more importantly, I did it for me. Not for revenge. Not for show. I turned to face him. I did it because they tried to erase me, and instead, I became impossible to ignore. I wasn't the girl they pushed out anymore. I was the woman who built a storm and made sure they felt every drop.